Today, we will analyze Nirmala Tai's 7th budget. Let's get straight into it.
It feels scary to jump in. That is exactly when you jump. Otherwise, you end up staying in the same place your whole life. And that I can't do.
We definitely need something drastic because this 6 to 7% growth rate is a given, right? Even if, and I keep telling people, if the budget was not announced this year, India would still grow at 7%. You cannot stop it. So the budget has to amplify things. It has to take things from the 7% to a 12%, 15% growth rate.
We just heard what Ashneer had to say, and it's quite true that even without any interference, India would still grow at about 6%. But let's first understand the basics. How much is our budget really? Well, it's a lot. This year, government has budgeted for 48,20,512 crores. That's correct, 48.2 lakh crores. Compare this to India's first budget in 1952, which was just about 400 crores. Even since COVID, it has doubled. But how does any government typically increase the budget?
People have patterns of behavior. Nobody ever does anything once. So let's say if somebody sent you an angry email that offended you and then they go, oh, I'm sorry.
Let's see the very basic broken down into two categories, revenue and capital expenditures. Revenue expenditure is the money spent by the Indian government on the normal running of its departments and services and other expenses that don't create assets. Whereas the second category of capital expenditures is for any expense that creates or increases assets like roads, airports, ports, etc. What you spend is collection of what you're able to get from companies and individuals, and the remaining amount which you borrow is called the fiscal deficit. For this year, as you can see, the budget is 48.2 lakh crores, out of which 32.1 would be collected from companies and individuals and other sources, while 16.1 lakh crores is the fiscal deficit. Simply put, government has budgeted by massively increasing the receipts by about 15%, which is huge. And this is where the online bashing really starts.
Now we want to talk to the Indian taxpayer, or rather the people who pay income tax. Almost all Indians pay taxes. Every time we buy something, there's always the eternal goods and services tax or GST waiting to take a cut. So almost every Indian pays taxes. But not all Indians pay taxes twice. That special privilege is reserved for about 2% of the population. For those of us in the salaried class, we have the honor of supporting the nation twice over, thanks to taxes, directly deducted from our salaries. And then again, when we pay GST on anything and everything.
You see, it's true. Unfortunately, if you look at the receipts from just three categories, that is the income, GST and the corporate taxes which are highlighted, this is where bulk of the increase sits, which have increased by anywhere between 10 to 13%. Although, there are other interesting details, but the overarching message is quite clear. Milk the corporations and the 2% taxpayers.
Nice to lie in the sun and just do nothing.
There's definitely lack of good quality jobs, high inflation in most important spend categories like health, education, rentals, transportation, and therefore it becomes a huge problem. And when you couple this with the higher aspirations and the overall rhetoric, it leads to massive frustration amongst common public. And don't ever look at the taxpayers the way Finance Minister does. Let's now shift to where all this money is being spent. This is the ministry-wise expenditure. On a percentage change basis, rural development, home affairs, communications, agri and farmers' welfare, housing see the biggest increase. Whereas when you look at the top 5 spend ministries, you have defense, spearheaded by Rajnath Singh, road and transport by Nitin Gadkari, railways by Ashwini Vaishnav, food and public distribution by Shivraj Chauhan, and home affairs by Amit Shah. Now this is the graph using which the online trolling went berserk. Aside from the minor personal tax reductions leading to anywhere between 10 to 15,000 of personal income tax savings, government took really harsh steps to increase the long-term and the short-term capital gains tax, along with removing any indexation-related benefits on the real estate. And this is where people really lost it. All the while, there was absolutely no revision in the goods and services tax. Therefore, there was no reduction in consumption taxes, while the ministry increased taxes on everything that was associated with investments.
Judge me for how good my good ideas are, not how bad my bad ideas are.
Well, things didn't just stop there. Income Tax India's Twitter page issued a lengthy clarification, and in one such FAQ, they said that 12 to 16% are nominal returns for real estate. This is where people lost it again, because in the last 8 years, we've had so many measures like demonetization, RERA, and COVID that massively impacted the real estate sector in India. In fact, leaving aside a few urban hot pockets, most of the places in India would not see this compounded growth rate at all for their real estate investments. Guess what? IDD must have learned something from people like Nikhil Kamath and Variko, who were advising people that they should not enter into real estate at all. Extremely tone-deaf babus and ministries. Shockingly, a good analysis came from Congress Kerala's Twitter page, where they discussed that in case of a 50 lakh property, bought 15 years back, any selling price of less than 2.7 crores will invite more taxes. So you need a 5.5 times increase in the value of your real estate investment if you don't want to get negatively impacted from this tax change. There are definitely a couple of second-order effects that follow from this. First, I think government wants to disincentivize selling of properties which have seen lower returns. But if you do want to do a distressed sale, government will grab a higher share through taxes. Secondly, in regions of high real estate prices, it can actually unlock more supply if people are willing to sell more to gain this tax advantage, which will in turn cool off the asset prices in those areas. So naturally the question comes.
तो सैलरीड वाला, खास करके प्राइवेट सेक्टर में जो सैलरीड इंसान होता है, उसके पास कोई सोशल सिक्योरिटी नहीं, उसके पास कोई पेंशन नहीं है, वो सरकारी नौकर नहीं है, उनका कौन सा बेनिफिट है जिस पर टैक्स नहीं लगता? ये सवाल जनता पूछ रही है, मिडिल क्लास के लोग पूछ रहे हैं.
To which she answered, budget is not just about taxes. Government should spend wisely so that it improves people's life and positions the country well for future growth. In fact, few domains like energy security, defense, job creation saw more focus.
To me, like, loyalty is really big. Because then if you invest in certain people in your life and they stick by you and you stick by them, and what else is life about?
Yeah, well, hardship will show you who your real friends are. That's for sure.
Let's talk about energy. Non-fossil and carbon-free sources got a huge push. First, small nuclear reactors, which can decentralize the presence of nuclear reactors and quickly build carbon-free electricity across the country. We need this to scale massively over the next decade. Second, there was renewed focus on shifting small businesses to cleaner sources of energy. And third, the solar panel scheme got a massive support to increase coverage, along with energy storage facilities to improve supply and demand matching. Next, the defense. Defense with 6.2 lakh crores continues to be the biggest allocated ministry amid national security concerns. In a rising geopolitically tensed global environment, and internally with the recent attacks in Jammu and Kashmir and the condition in Manipur, all this will continue to require significant army support over the next few years. And the final significant change has been in job creation. But let's hear Ashneer's thought on this.
For the last 10 years, you've been delivering 7% growth rate. Your job growth would be lesser than that, right? So till that time you understand that the government spending is not driving the economy and therefore is not driving job growth, you'll keep making the same mistake and nothing is going to happen out of it. I would rather say don't tax people, let them invest where they want to invest. Private enterprise can create 10x more jobs than any government can create. Yes. Penny to penny.
And government has finally realized this. In a country that's obsessed with government jobs, focus on private enterprises has to increase. Therefore, one of the biggest standout features in this budget was to bring similar to a production-linked incentive, that is ELI, or the employment-linked incentives, under which 3 schemes will broadly provide A, first month wages for a lot of employees, contribute to EPFO, and thirdly, expedite manufacturing jobs along with providing skilling programs. Lastly, reduction in corporate tax rate on foreign companies and abolishment of angel tax should hopefully increase jobs for the highly skilled workforce as well.
Zoom out and go, all these things you're worried about, all these things that you see happening, they've all happened before, they're all going to happen again. Everything that you're worried about is much smaller than it is that you make it in your head. That's his basic message.
Talking about the final verdict, I think this was a fine budget with a lot of gives and takes. But BJP is definitely one of the worst communicators. They do a lot of good things, but they just let go of the narrative every single time. Post the election, all the electoral planks seem to have lost. 1, the terror attacks. 2nd, the bureaucracy scandals. 3rd, the paper leaks. And now this latest episode of hegemonic taxations on the middle class. We don't mind paying more tax as long as there is more accountability from the political class on how the money will make a difference to our lives. But nothing of that sort exists. That is the biggest issue. The only good thing is that BJP will come up with their new budget in exactly 6 months. So remember, by Feb 2025, we might have something new. Thanks for staying put until this moment. Here's the final take on all of this. If pharma companies cured you, they would go bankrupt. If banks helped you, they would collapse. If politicians solved your problem, nobody will elect them again. If Tom kills Jerry, the show is over. It's all a big show. Everything is designed accordingly.